Tom lived alone on a quiet green planet called Elora 7. It was far from Earth, far from the busy cities, and even farther from the noise of other people. He had chosen this life many years ago, and he never regretted it. No traffic, no loud machines, no endless talking, just trees, birds, soft winds, and the sound of his small tools as he worked. His home was a small wooden cabin at the edge of a forest. It had a garden full of bright flowers and vegetables. He built it all himself. He had solar panels on the roof, a water filter made from old parts, and even a small robot that helped him with farming. He called the robot Pebble. It didn't talk much, just the way Tom liked it. Each morning Tom woke up with the sun. He boiled water for tea, sat on his porch, and listened to the birds sing. Then he worked in his garden or fixed old machines he found in the forest. Sometimes he listened to music on his old earth player, soft piano music or calm guitar songs. Life was slow, but good. One day, everything changed. It started with a sound, a low, distant hum. Then a streak of light across the sky, fast and bright. Tom looked up, squinting. It wasn't a star or a meteor. It was too controlled, too smooth. Something was falling, or crashing, and it was coming down not far from his cabin. The sound grew louder. The light vanished behind the trees. A deep rumble followed, and the ground shook slightly. Birds flew away in a rush. Pebble turned its head toward the forest, blinking. Tom stood still for a moment. Then he put down his tea, grabbed a small bag with tools, and headed toward the crash. The forest was quiet as he walked, but not in a peaceful way. It was the kind of quiet that made animals hide. Something big had come down. As Tom moved deeper into the trees, he saw broken branches and a thin trail of smoke in the air. After walking for 15 minutes, he found it. A ship, small, silver, and shaped like a teardrop, was half buried in the soft ground. Steam hissed from its sides. Lights blinked slowly around the edge. It didn't look like a fighter ship or a cargo carrier. It looked royal, in a strange way, polished, clean, and beautiful. Tom stepped closer, careful not to touch anything. Then he saw the window. Inside was someone. A person. No, not quite a person. She had smooth, pale skin with a faint shimmer, like moonlight. Her hair floated slightly, even though the ship was still. She wore a strange dress that looked like it was made of soft light and silk. Her eyes were closed. Tom hesitated. He wasn't the kind of man to get involved. But he wasn't the kind of man to walk away either. He gently tapped on the glass. No response. He found a panel on the side of the ship and opened it with one of his tools. A soft click, and the door slid open. The air inside was warm. The girl lay still, breathing slowly. She looked peaceful but tired, as if she had used all her strength to get here. Tom didn't know who she was or why she came, but he knew one thing. His quiet life was about to change. Tom didn't waste time. He gently lifted the strange girl into his arms. She was lighter than she looked, and her skin was cool to the touch. Her eyes stayed closed, and her breathing was slow but steady. She didn't seem hurt, just very tired, or maybe very weak. He carried her through the forest, careful not to move too fast. The wind was soft, and the trees whispered as he passed. Pebble, the little robot, met him near the garden and beeped with concern. Tom only nodded and pointed toward the cabin. The robot rolled ahead and opened the door. Inside, Tom placed the girl on a small bed in the corner of the room. He pulled a blanket over her and sat on a stool nearby. For a long time, he watched her, wondering where she came from. Her clothes shimmered like they were made from stars. A small, silver mark glowed on her forehead. It looked like a crown. Tom had seen many things in his life, but never anyone like her. After checking her pulse and making sure she was stable, Tom turned to his old computer. He ran a few scans using leftover Earth tech. The readings were strange. Her body was similar to a human's, but there were small differences. Her cells were stronger, her brain activity more active, even in sleep. Tom sighed. Not a regular visitor, he said to himself. Hours passed. He made soup and waited. Pebble sat quietly in the corner, blinking now and then. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. Then, just as the stars began to show, she woke up. Her eyes opened slowly, bright and full of light, like silver mirrors. She looked around, confused. When she saw Tom, she tried to sit up, but her arms trembled. "Easy," Tom said, holding out a hand. "You're safe." She looked at him with wide eyes. Her lips moved and she whispered one word: "Help." Her voice was soft, musical and full of fear. Tom nodded. "You're okay now. You crashed, but I brought you here." She blinked as if trying to remember. Then she looked down at her hands, then around the cabin. Her gaze stopped at the old Earth flag hanging near the door. "You human?" she asked. Tom gave a small smile. "Yes. Name's Tom. I live here." She stared at him, her eyes full of wonder. "You live alone?" "I like peace and quiet," he replied. She took a deep breath. "I am Mira, Princess of Valen." She said it like it should mean something important. Tom didn't react. He just handed her a warm cup of soup. "Princess or not, you need food." Mira looked at the cup, then back at him. Slowly she took it and drank. Her hands were still shaking, but the warmth seemed to help. "I was running," she said after a while. "From my people. They want to control me, use me. I escaped." Tom nodded. "And now you're here." She looked at him again as if trying to understand. "You're not surprised?" "I've seen a lot in my time," Tom said simply. "Aliens, ships, machines. Royalty too. Doesn't change the fact that you're cold, tired and hungry." Mira smiled a little. It was the first time her face relaxed. "You are strange, Tom," she said. "Most people want something from a princess." Tom leaned back in his chair. "I already have everything I need. Garden, tea, peace." Mira looked at the cabin, the wooden walls, the gentle lights, the smell of plants and old books. It was nothing like the palace she had known, yet it felt safe. "I think," she said quietly, "I was meant to find this place." Tom didn't answer. He just poured another cup of tea and watched the stars through the window. Outside, the night was calm. But inside the little cabin, two very different lives had just started to change. The days that followed were quiet. Mira, the princess from another world, stayed in Tom's cabin. She no longer seemed weak, but she wasn't fully herself yet. She spent most of her time staring out of the window, watching the green hills and the vast sky. Every now and then, she would ask Tom about Earth and its people. Tom wasn't much of a talker, but he didn't mind explaining things when she asked. He told her about life on Earth, about the old cities, the wars, and the peaceful times that followed. He even showed her a few old Earth films he had saved on a small tablet, the kind of films that people used to watch before everything changed. Mira was fascinated by the stories. She had never seen anything like them, and they gave her a glimpse into the life of a people so different from her own. One evening, as the two of them sat outside on the porch, Mira asked something that made Tom pause. "Why did you leave Earth?" she asked. Her eyes were soft, curious. Tom stared into the distance at the rolling hills and the fading sunset. The golden light of dusk made everything look peaceful, but Tom's face darkened a little. "I didn't leave Earth," he said slowly. "I left the noise, the constant pushing, the fighting, the chaos. I needed quiet, something real, a place to think." Mira tilted her head, considering his words. She had grown up in a palace where noise was never far away. People shouting orders, the hum of machines, the constant pressure of expectation. She understood what he meant, but she could never fully imagine living like that. "I understand," she said quietly. "My life. It was never my own. I was always told what to do, what to wear, who to talk to, who to marry. It was all planned for me. Even the air I breathed felt heavy." Tom looked at her, his expression softening. "Sounds like you're running from a cage," he said, his voice low. "But you've found freedom now. You've got the stars ahead of you." Mira smiled faintly. "Maybe. But I don't know what to do with it. I don't know where to go." Tom paused, looking out at the horizon. "Well, I don't have all the answers, but you've got a good start. You found your way here, didn't you?" She looked at him with a mix of gratitude and wonder. "Yes," she said softly. "I did, and I don't know why, but I think I needed to find you, Tom. Maybe the stars weren't the only thing calling me." Tom didn't reply right away. He wasn't sure what she meant, but he could sense that Mira wasn't just talking about the stars in the sky. There was something deeper there, something she had been searching for, something she felt in her heart. The following days were filled with small discoveries. Tom showed Mira how to tend the garden, how to fix broken machines, and how to enjoy the simple pleasures of life. He taught her to make tea from the herbs he grew, and they sat together in the evenings, sipping the warm liquid as the stars twinkled above them. Mira had never known such peace, but as much as she enjoyed the quiet moments, a part of her knew she couldn't stay forever. She was a princess after all, and there were duties waiting for her. Her people, her family, even her enemies, they were all out there, far beyond the green hills of Elora 7. She was not just any wanderer. She was a leader, a ruler, and that responsibility was hers. One morning as they were having breakfast, Mira looked at Tom with a serious expression. "I can't stay here forever," she said. "I have a world to return to." Tom nodded, understanding. He knew that deep down, she had never truly left her old life behind. The call of her people would always be there, pulling at her. "I know," he said quietly. "But you've got more choices now. You can go back if you want, but it's your choice." Mira didn't respond right away. She just looked at the steaming cup of tea in her hands, lost in thought. The stars in the sky above seemed so far away, and yet they were within her reach. For the first time in her life, Mira felt like she could choose her own path. She looked up at Tom, her eyes filled with quiet determination. I think I have to go back. But I won't be the same." Tom smiled, a small but knowing smile. "No, you won't be." The days grew longer as Mira's strength returned. She was no longer the fragile, tired princess who had stumbled into Tom's cabin weeks ago. Now, her eyes held a spark of determination, and her movements were graceful, even when she worked. With the strange, unfamiliar tools in Tom's cabin, Mira was learning quickly. She watched how Tom fixed old machines, some of them ancient Earth relics, and how he made things work again just by understanding their parts. He had built an entire farm with little more than scrap metal and old technology, and he could make anything come alive with his hands. It fascinated her. One day, as they were working together, Mira asked, "How did you learn all of this? Back on Earth, everything is so controlled. People are told what to do, what to think. No one teaches you how to make things work like this." Tom looked up from a broken robot he was repairing. "I didn't learn from others. I learned from the machines themselves." Mira raised an eyebrow. "The machines taught you?" Tom smiled a little. Not exactly. But they're not as complicated as people think. You just need to listen to them. When you understand how something works, it doesn't seem so hard. Mira was quiet for a moment, absorbing his words. Her life had been full of people telling her what to do. She had been trained to rule, to speak, to act according to the will of the Velan Empire. But Tom, he had taught himself. He had worked with the machines until he understood them. The thought was both strange and comforting to her. Mira had spent her life surrounded by luxury, but she had never truly understood how anything worked. It was as if everything had been built for her, and she had never had to do the hard work herself. Over the next few days, Tom showed Mira how to fix broken robots, how to build small machines, and how to keep the garden healthy with the help of technology. Mira wasn't sure if she would ever become as good as Tom, but she was determined to try. One afternoon, as she worked with the old gardening bot, she looked up at him. "You know," she said, "I always thought Earth was a primitive world, but now I see it's not as simple as I thought. You've done things here that my people could never dream of." Tom gave a soft laugh. "I'm not a genius. I just have time to think and tinker. Where I'm from, everyone's too busy to notice what's right in front of them." Mira looked down at her hands, which were dirty from working in the garden. She had never felt more at home than she did now, in this simple life, learning how to make things work. She hadn't expected to find a place like this on a planet so far from her own. After a while, she turned to Tom. "I've been thinking, maybe I don't need to go back right away. I could stay here longer, learn more." Tom looked at her thoughtfully, a hint of sadness in his eyes. "I don't want to keep you here forever. You've got a duty to your people, Mira. You're not just anyone, you're a princess." Mira sighed, her shoulders slumping. "I know, but I can't go back to the way things were. I can't be what they want me to be. Maybe there's a middle ground." Tom didn't say anything for a while. He just watched her, wondering what she was thinking. He knew she was struggling. She had been raised to rule, to control, to command. But now, she had tasted freedom, and it was hard to give that up. "I can't make the decision for you," Tom said at last. "But whatever you choose, you've got the strength to make it happen." Mira nodded slowly. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for Tom. He hadn't treated her like royalty. He hadn't bowed to her or expected anything from her. He had simply treated her as she was, a person. "I think I'm starting to understand," Mira said, looking out over the garden. "I don't have to follow the path they set for me. I can choose my own way." Tom smiled. "That's the first step." Mira's heart felt lighter than it had in years. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time she wasn't afraid of it. Whatever happened, she knew she wouldn't be alone. And that, she realized, was the most important thing. The days passed quietly once more. Tom and Mira continued their peaceful routine, working on the garden, fixing old machines, and sharing stories. It was the kind of life Mira had never imagined she would find, but the longer she stayed on Elora 7, the more it felt like home. She had learned so much from Tom, not just about technology, but about the simple joy of living without pressure, without a crown, without expectations. But that peace was about to be interrupted. One morning, as Tom worked on a broken solar panel in the garden, Mira stood on the porch, gazing out at the sky. The stars were still visible in the early hours, and she found herself looking for something familiar, something that might remind her of Velan, her home world. But the sky here was different. It felt wider, more open. Suddenly, a strange sound broke the silence, a low hum, distant at first but growing louder. Mira's eyes narrowed, her heart racing. Tom heard it too. He stood up, wiping his hands on his shirt, and looked toward the horizon. A speck appeared in the sky, growing larger with each passing second. "It's them," Mira whispered under her breath. Her voice was steady, but there was a hint of worry in it. Tom didn't need to ask. He had seen the way Mira's face had shifted when she recognized the sound. "You don't have to deal with them, you know," he said quietly. "You're free now. You don't owe them anything." Mira shook her head. "I can't run forever. They'll keep coming after me until they find me." The ship appeared then, a sleek silver vessel cutting through the sky like a blade. It was too fast to be a regular ship, and its smooth, almost perfect shape told Mira everything she needed to know. It was from Valen. "They've come," she said, her voice tight. Tom watched as the ship landed softly just beyond the tree line, not far from the cabin. The ground trembled slightly as it touched down, sending birds flying into the air in a flurry of wings. The ship's door opened, and a few figures emerged, all wearing the same dark uniforms that Mira had seen on Velan's royal guard. "Mira, you need to hide," Tom said, his voice calm but firm. Mira shook her head. "No, I won't run anymore." She stepped away from the porch, walking toward the ship. Tom hesitated, then followed her, feeling the weight of the moment pressing on him. He wasn't sure what was about to happen, but he knew one thing. Mira was no longer the frightened princess who had crashed onto his planet. She was someone new, someone who had found a part of herself in the quiet, peaceful life they had shared. And he wasn't going to let anyone take that from her. As they reached the ship, the figures stepped forward. They were tall, strong, and their faces were stern, almost cold. One of them, a man with silver hair and sharp features, stepped forward and bowed slightly, though his gaze never softened. "Mira," he said, his voice clipped. "It's time to come home." Mira stood tall, meeting his gaze without hesitation. "I'm not going back," she said firmly. "I'm not going back to a life I never chose." The man's eyes flickered to Tom, then back to Mira. "You have responsibilities, princess. Your people need you. Your family needs you." Mira took a deep breath, her voice steady. "I'm not a princess anymore. I'm Mira. And I've learned that I don't have to do what they want me to. I choose my own path now." Tom stood beside her, silent but unwavering. He had no idea who these people were, but he knew Mira had made her decision, and that was enough for him. The man seemed to consider her words for a moment before sighing. "You are a fool, Mira. You have no idea what you're giving up." "I do," she replied. "But I also know what I'm gaining." For a long moment, no one spoke. The air felt heavy with the weight of decisions being made, but Mira's voice finally broke the silence. "Leave." "I'm not coming back with you," she said, her voice strong. "And if you don't leave, I'll make you." Tom could see the tension in the air, but he also saw the resolve in Mira's eyes. She wasn't a frightened princess anymore. She was someone who had found her voice, her freedom. The man, after a moment of hesitation, gave a short nod. "Very well, but don't think this is over, Mira. The Valen Empire doesn't forget." And with that, the group turned and returned to their ship, leaving Mira and Tom standing in the quiet. The ship took off again, disappearing into the sky. Mira watched them go, then turned to Tom. "I've made my choice," she said quietly. Tom nodded. "I can see that." She smiled, a real smile this time, one of peace, not fear. After the ship disappeared into the sky, the calm returned to the small cabin. The air seemed to settle, and even the birds resumed their songs in the trees. But Mira knew that the peace wouldn't last forever. The visit from the Valen Empire was only the beginning. She had made a choice, but it was a choice that came with consequences. Tom stood beside her, quietly watching the sky, as if waiting for something. The silence between them was comfortable, yet heavy with unspoken thoughts. Mira turned to him. You know, I didn't expect them to leave so easily. Tom shrugged. They'll be back, but they can't force you to go anywhere. Mira nodded, slowly. They'll try. But I can't go back to that life, not after everything I've learned here. I've found something I never knew I needed. Freedom. And I won't give it up. Tom smiled at her, the corners of his eyes crinkling with understanding. You've got it now, and that's yours to keep. They stood there for a moment, each lost in their thoughts. Mira knew the future wasn't clear, and she had no idea what the next steps would be. But she felt stronger than ever before. For the first time in her life, she was not defined by her title or her royal blood. She was simply Mira. As the days passed, life at the cabin returned to its peaceful rhythm. Mira continued to learn from Tom. Together, they worked in the garden, repairing the old machines and growing more food. She found joy in the simple tasks, the ones she had never done before, like picking herbs or fixing a broken tool. Her hands, once used to the luxury of a palace, were now strong from the work. But her mind never truly stopped thinking about what lay ahead. Mira spent her nights staring at the stars, remembering the life she had left behind, and wondering what the future would hold. She was no longer a princess, but her past was not so easily erased. One morning, after a long night of thinking, Mira stood at the edge of the cabin, looking at the distant hills. She could see the small town in the distance, but she hadn't gone there yet. She wasn't sure if she was ready. What would the people think of her now? A princess turned wanderer, living alone with a stranger. You're thinking too much, Tom said from behind her, his voice light but his eyes serious. What's on your mind? Mira sighed, turning to face him. I don't know where I belong anymore. I've chosen freedom, but sometimes I wonder if that's enough. I left behind everything, my family, my people, the palace. What if I'm making a mistake? Tom looked at her, his expression thoughtful. Maybe it's not about being right or wrong. Maybe it's just about finding what makes you happy. You've spent your whole life being told what to do. Now it's time to choose for yourself. Mira studied his face, seeing the sincerity in his words. It was strange, but Tom had become someone she trusted more than anyone. He wasn't her enemy, and he wasn't trying to control her. He had given her space to figure things out, and he had shown her that life didn't have to be complicated. I think you're right, she said quietly. I need to stop worrying about the past and just to live. Tom smiled, his eyes softening. It's a good place to start. As the days went by, Mira found herself spending more time in the small town. At first, the people were cautious, unsure of her. They had heard of the princess who had disappeared from the Valen Empire, but they didn't know what to expect from her. But Mira was determined to prove that she was no longer the princess they had heard about. She was Mira. Just like them, she worked alongside the townspeople, helped them with their farms, and shared what little knowledge she had gained about Earth's technology. Slowly, the people warmed to her. They saw her as someone who wasn't above them, someone who had chosen to live like them. Mira had earned their respect, not by her title, but by her actions. One evening, as Mira and Tom sat outside on the porch watching the stars again, she turned to him with a smile. I think I've found my place here. Tom looked at her, his eyes bright in the dim light. I'm glad. Mira leaned back in her chair, gazing up at the sky. The stars seemed closer now, as if they were part of her, guiding her forward. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel lost. She had chosen her path, and now she would walk it on her own terms. Life continued to settle into a peaceful rhythm for Mira. The town around her was small, but it had a warmth that made her feel welcome. She had become a part of it, helping with the harvest, learning the ways of the people, and even sharing stories of her own, though she left out her royal past. She wasn't ready to face that part of herself just yet. Tom remained a steady presence by her side. He was the one who helped her adjust to life without the constant noise of the palace. But even as time passed, Mira couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing, something important. Her heart ached when she thought of her family, her father, her mother, her brothers. She missed them, but she knew that returning to Valen was not the answer. Not yet, at least. One evening, as Mira walked along the edge of the town, she heard the unmistakable hum of a ship in the distance. It wasn't the same sound as before. This time it was slower, more deliberate. Mira paused, her body stiffening instinctively. Her heart skipped a beat as she glanced at the sky. The ship was larger than the one that had come for her before, and it was coming in low. She turned quickly and rushed back to the cabin. Tom was there, sitting on the porch, reading something from his tablet. "There's another ship," Mira said, her voice sharp. "It's coming this way." Tom immediately stood up, his eyes narrowing. "We need to be ready. We don't know who it is." Mira felt a cold knot in her stomach. She had thought the Velen Empire had forgotten about her, but now she wasn't so sure. Her past, the life she had left behind, was about to catch up to her once again. The ship grew closer, and Mira could see it clearly now. A large, dark vessel with sharp angles and glowing lights. It didn't belong to the small town, that much was clear. She could feel the tension rising in her chest. "This is it," she muttered, more to herself than to Tom. "They're coming for me again." Tom stepped closer, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. "We don't have to face them alone. We can run if you want." Mira shook her head. "I won't run anymore. I've made my decision." The ship landed softly, sending a gust of wind through the trees. Mira and Tom walked slowly toward the clearing where the ship had touched down. A ramp lowered from the ship, and figures began to emerge. There were more of them this time, and they wore uniforms that Mira recognized. But they weren't the guards from before. These people were different. Their posture was less rigid, less formal. They seemed more like travelers than soldiers. One of them, a woman with dark hair and a commanding presence, stepped forward. She looked at Mira with something resembling a smile. "Mira," she said softly. "We've been looking for you." Mira stood her ground, her expression unwavering. "I told you already. I'm not going back." The woman's eyes softened, but her tone remained firm. "We're not here to take you back. We're here to give you something." Mira felt a wave of confusion wash over her. "What do you mean?" The woman reached into her coat and pulled out a small metallic box. "This is a message from your father. He's not the same man you remember, Mira. He's changed. He's willing to make things right for you, for your people, for your future." Mira's heart skipped a beat. She wanted to believe it. She wanted to believe that her father, the man who had once ruled the empire with an iron fist, had changed. But after everything she had been through, everything she had learned about herself, she wasn't sure if she could trust the words of someone who had never seen her as anything more than a pawn. "I don't know if I can believe that," Mira said quietly. The woman nodded, her gaze understanding. "You don't have to decide right now, but we thought you should know. You have a choice, Mira. You don't have to keep running. Your people need you, but you don't have to go back the way you left. Your father wants to change the empire. He wants to work with you." Mira stood silently, the weight of the decision pressing heavily on her. She had left everything behind to escape a life of control. But now, the possibility of something different, something better, was staring her in the face. She glanced at Tom, who was standing by her side, waiting for her decision. For a long time, Mira was silent. Her heart was torn. She had dreamed of freedom, of living a life without the weight of her title. But now that she was faced with the possibility of returning home to help rebuild the empire, she didn't know what to do. "Take your time," the woman said softly. The choice is yours, Mira. Mira stood frozen in place, the metallic box still resting in the woman's hand. The words she had just spoken echoed in her mind. Your father wants to change the Empire. He wants to work with you. The thought of returning to Velen, after everything she had left behind, stirred something deep inside her, a mix of longing and uncertainty. Tom stood by her side, his presence comforting but also a reminder of the choice she now faced. He didn't say anything at first, sensing her inner turmoil. He simply watched, waiting for her to speak, waiting for her to make the decision that would shape the rest of her life. Mira's gaze shifted to the woman in front of her, still holding the box. Why now? She asked, her voice quieter than usual. Why would my father reach out to me after everything that's happened? The woman took a deep breath, her expression serious. Your father's been watching you, Mira. He's seen what you've done, how you've changed, how you've lived. And he's beginning to see the errors in his ways. He knows that the Empire cannot continue as it has, not without consequences, but he also knows that the Velen Empire needs you, just as much as you may need them. Mira felt her heart pound in her chest. The idea of her father, someone who had always seemed so distant, so unreachable, actually wanting to change, wanting to fix things, was almost too much to believe. But part of her wanted it to be true. Part of her wanted to go back, to help him, to help her people. But was she ready to walk that path again? The woman held out the box, offering it to Mira. This message is for you. It's from your father. He's offering a way forward. But the decision is yours. Mira hesitated. It was the moment she had been dreading ever since she left Velen. It wasn't just a decision about her future. It was a decision about who she was, who she had become. She had spent so long trying to define herself outside of her royal life, trying to escape the constraints of being a princess. But now, with this new information, she wondered if she could somehow blend the two worlds. Could she be the person she had become and still help the people who needed her? Taking a deep breath, she reached out and gently took the box from the woman's hands. Her fingers brushed against the smooth surface of the metal, and for a moment she felt a strange connection to it, like it was a bridge to her past, a past she had spent so long trying to leave behind. I'll read it, Mira said softly, her voice steady despite the uncertainty within her. The woman nodded and stepped back, giving her space. Mira opened the box, revealing a small holographic projector. She activated it, and a soft blue light illuminated the area in front of her. The image that appeared was that of her father, sitting in a grand room, surrounded by dark velvet curtains and polished wood. He looked older, more tired than the last time she had seen him. His face was solemn, but there was something different about him, something more vulnerable than she had ever seen before. Mira, her father's voice said, filled with a warmth that surprised her. I know I've failed you. I know I've failed our people. I thought I could control everything, that I could keep the Empire safe by holding on to power. But I see now that the Empire has lost its way. It needs new leadership. It needs you. Mira's heart clenched as she watched her father speak. The man she had once feared, the man who had controlled every aspect of her life, was now admitting his mistakes, asking for help. It was both heartbreaking and hopeful at the same time. I don't expect you to return right away, her father continued in the message. I know I've hurt you and I don't want to push you, but I need you, Mira. The people need you. Together, we can rebuild this empire, and we can do it the right way. Please come back. I can't do this alone. The image flickered and disappeared, leaving Mira standing in the quiet clearing, holding the small box in her hands. She felt a mixture of emotions, anger, sadness, and a strange sense of hope. Could she really go back to Velan? Could she help? Her father, even after everything he had done. Tom was watching her closely, his expression thoughtful. What do you think? Mira took a deep breath. I don't know yet, but I can't ignore the possibility. If my father is willing to change, maybe this is the opportunity I've been waiting for. Maybe I can help make things right. Tom nodded slowly. It's your choice, Mira, but remember, you don't have to do this alone. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. She smiled at him, her heart filled with gratitude. She knew that whatever path she chose, she wouldn't be walking it alone. Tom had become more than just a friend. He had become her anchor, the person who had shown her what it meant to live freely. I'll go, Mira said finally, her voice stronger now. But I'll do it on my terms, not as a princess, not as someone's pawn. I'll go as Mira, and I'll help lead the way to something better. Tom smiled, his eyes proud. I knew you'd find your way. With a new sense of resolve, Mira turned back to the cabin, ready to face whatever came next. She wasn't sure what the future would hold, but she knew one thing for sure. She was no longer running. She was ready to face her past, and she was ready to shape her future. The decision was made. Mira had chosen her path, and it was no longer just about escaping her past. It was about confronting it, understanding it, and using what she had learned to make a difference. She wasn't the princess she had once been, and she wasn't running anymore. She was Mira, and it was time to face the world head-on. The days leading up to her departure were filled with quiet preparations. She packed only the essentials, leaving behind the things she had grown attached to, things that symbolized the life she was leaving behind. There was no room for nostalgia in the future she envisioned. Everything she carried now had purpose. Tom helped her gather the things she would need for the journey. He didn't say much, but his support was clear in every action. He had been by her side through so much, and now he was helping her take the next step into the unknown. You're sure about this? Tom asked one evening, his voice soft but steady as he handed her a small bundle of supplies. Mira looked up at him, her eyes determined. I'm sure. It's the right choice. They stood outside the cabin, under a sky that was slowly turning golden as the sun dipped lower. The small town behind them was quiet, its streets empty in the late afternoon. Mira glanced one last time at the place she had come to think of as home. She had found peace here, but she knew that her true journey lay ahead, beyond the familiar hills and the quiet life she had built. As the ship from the Velan Empire descended once more, Mira felt a strange calm wash over her. She was ready for whatever came next. This time, she wasn't going to be swept along by circumstances. She was in control. The ship landed softly, and the same woman who had brought her the message from her father stepped out. She was accompanied by a few others, their expressions serious but not unfriendly. Mira, the woman said, her tone gentle yet firm. We're ready to go when you are. Mira took a deep breath and nodded. I'm ready. She turned to Tom, her friend, her companion. Thank you for everything. I couldn't have made it this far without you. Tom smiled at her, a warmth in his eyes. I knew you'd find your way. No matter what happens, just know that you've changed the world already. You've shown everyone that change is possible. Mira smiled back, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't felt before. The journey was just beginning, but she was no longer afraid. She had found herself again. As she climbed into the ship, the familiar hum of the engine surrounded her. The crew was efficient, moving with practiced ease as they prepared for takeoff. Mira sat by the window, watching the town shrink away, the hills turning into distant shadows. Her heart wasn't heavy anymore. It was light, filled with hope. She had made her choice, and now it was time to see it through. The ship ascended, rising above the clouds. Mira could feel the weight of the sky lifting her, carrying her toward the unknown. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the sensation of freedom fill her. The past wasn't gone, but it no longer had control over her. She was walking into the future with her head held high. As the ship broke through the atmosphere, the stars seemed to welcome her, their light brighter than she had ever seen from the surface of Earth. She looked out at them, a smile on her face. She wasn't the lost princess anymore. She was a leader, a person who had chosen her own path, and the stars above seemed to recognize that. Hours later, the ship began its descent toward the Valen Empire. Mira's heart raced a little. She didn't know what awaited her, but she knew she had the strength to face it. This wasn't about returning to the life she had left behind. This was about shaping a future that was truly hers. When the ship touched down on Valen soil, Mira was ready. She stepped off the craft, her boots touching the ground with a sense of finality. The empire was vast, its towering buildings gleaming in the sunlight, but it wasn't the empire she had once known. This was a new beginning, not just for her, but for everyone. Her father was waiting for her, his posture still regal, but there was something different in his eyes. There was humility there, and a hope that had been missing the last time they had seen each other. "Mira," he said, his voice softer than she remembered. "I've been waiting for this moment, for you." She met his gaze, her own eyes unwavering. "I'm here to help you, but I need to know that you truly mean it. You're willing to change, to lead the empire, not as a ruler, but as a partner." Her father nodded, his expression serious. "I am. I've learned the hard way. This empire needs a new way forward, a way that includes everyone." Mira nodded, her resolve firm. "Then let's begin." And with that, Mira took her first steps into a new chapter of her life. It was a chapter that didn't belong to a princess, but to a woman determined to make the universe a better place. Her journey had just begun, and the possibilities were endless.